Anesthesiologists have read it. What was something you won't forget hearing from someone that was under? Can I tell an Ambien story? It fits the spirit of the question. My mom worked the night shift for 15 years and couldn't sleep during the day, so her doctor prescribed her some Ambien so she could get some rest. I was maybe 12 or so at the time. One day, she poked her head into my room when she should have been sleeping with the most zonked-out expression I've ever seen. Just opened my door, stared at me like a zombie, then shuffled away. She must have done the same thing to my little sister, 8, because she came into my room a second later, clearly horrified. We found my mom in the kitchen, sitting on the bench at the table, in a daze. I grabbed the camcorder because this was too weird. We tried to get her to go to bed, but she refused until we got her a cup of milk. We did, but she didn't drink it, just stared at it. So we helped her up and told her we were taking her to bed. She refused again, and would only agree if she could put on her slippers. Fine. We walked her to her slippers, but she claimed she couldn't wear them because she only had 2 slippers but 4 feet. I told her no, she's got 2 feet like everyone. She got irritated because she could obviously see 4 feet, like a dog, and she wasn't a dog. So we told her to put 2 of her feet in and go barefoot with her extra feet. She started doing a weird shuffle jump, trying to get both feet into her slippers at the same time. Eventually, we managed to get her to bed. She remembered none of this when she woke up hours later. Luckily, I had the whole ordeal on tape, which she refused to watch out of embarrassment. She never took Ambien again. I know someone who painted their kitchen floor red on Ambien. Not very well. They had been painting another room in their house so the paint was accessible. After an operation on a patient's neck, he woke up and yelled AHHHH, then grabbed his junk with both hands and was like, "Oh, thank God, it's still there," then immediately passed out again. He clearly had his priorities in order. I had an ovarian cyst removed a year ago and woke up from the anesthesia saying hand please, and making grabby hands with both my hands until the nurses finally came over and held my hands for about 5 minutes while I just smiled and tried to go back to sleep. I hadn't done that in a decade. I used to do it to my dad all the time as a kid to express that I wanted to hold his hand while I slept. I recently had surgery for endometriosis, and I did the exact same thing. The nurses nicely held my hand before setting it back on the bed once I calmed down. Apparently, this lasted for 15 to 20 minutes until I realized they had tucked the stuffed animal I brought under my arm and that I could hold it instead. They put bandages on it in the same place I had them. I'm 24, but because of COVID I had to be alone and a stuffed animal was the best I could do. The rabbit. Oh, I wish I did that for my endo surgery. I guess I'm resistant to anesthesia, so I need just a touch more to get me totally under. My doctor told me later on in recovery that I kept trying to get up, very calmly, and kick everyone. Now I know to let any anesthesiologist know to have a little extra juice on hand. My boyfriend at the time had just gotten his wisdom teeth removed. On the ride home with his mouth full of gauze, he gets a call on his cell phone. He answered it and just starts talking away. Whoever it was on the other side could not possibly understand a word he was saying with all the gauze in his mouth. But man, he had a lot to talk about and they apparently didn't hang up. After about 5 minutes of this unintelligible phone conversation, he looks at me and says, "Oh, with a robot," and gives me the phone. I put it to my ear, and the whole time it's been the Walgreens pharmacy automated notice simply stating his prescription is ready for pickup, playing on repeat. Probably for the best. I'm glad I'm not the only one who calls it a robot. I went to the pharmacy once and they asked a question about auto refills or something, to which I casually replied, "Oh, your robot called me." They were very confused, even after I explained what I meant. It's just more fun to call it a robot. I ask a patient after surgery how he feels. He opens his eyes, stares me dead on and says, "With my fingers." Then he goes right back to sleep. This man has at least 2 kids. I woke up from gallbladder surgery, confused as to why my mom wasn't there. I was 18 and looking for my mom. The nurse informed me I had cussed out my entire family and they sent them home and put me on a no-visitor list, only for me to wake up at 2 a.m. with no memory, making them call my mom back. Another time I woke up and made horrifically inappropriate jokes. I told a nurse she was pissing me off because I didn't like the automatic blood pressure cuff. Another, I refused to listen to follow-up orders until I had a chicken sandwich. My negotiations were not met. I'm a real treat after anesthesia, but I get a lot of this done at the office my mom works at so she can warn them, lol. This is a huge fear of mine. That I'll have surgery and turn into a raging arsehole when coming out. I'm an anesthesiologist. The best story was a 40-some-year-old woman for appendectomy, said while I'm giving the propofol to induce anesthesia. She said, "Oh, I don't remember it tasting like that before," slurred. I said, "What does it taste like, since propofol doesn't usually elicit a taste reaction?" She almost yelled "D's nuts," and was promptly under anesthesia thereafter. There have been other stories, but this one has the entire or staff rolling laughing for minutes after she was under. Priceless LMAO. This was a planned strike. My aunt got rushed to the hospital for abnormal heart rate, but it wasn't a heart attack or stroke, but her heart was going at like 200 beats per minute or whatever it was. They had to put her under so they could shock her heart back to normal. As they're taking her under, the doctor says something like "okay," and it goes, and she immediately quips with, "That's what she said." All the doctors and nurses busted a gut laughing and told my uncle when he got there. He just shrugged and said, "That's my wife for you. I like your aunt." One summer I was home from college and my dad needed me to pick him up after his very first colonoscopy. He was nervous, so I got there early. The nurse called me back and asked me to help wake him up, as they were having some trouble. I go back and am making chit-chat. "Oh Dad, you've got those cool booties on." He raised his head a little bit to look at them, then yelled, "Booty call." He is a Presbyterian pastor. A moment I will treasure forever. Have you told him this, or is it a secret you're hanging on to? First of all, love your name. And yes, I told him when he was more coherent. He doesn't remember it, and honestly, I don't think he believes me.